Time to cut some holes in the back panel for the terminal cup and the vent tube. The way you do it here is I've got this circle jig and you just line it up. So this is 1 inch, and then you go all the way around here where it says 15/16, and you just kind of follow that in, put the pin in there, and then you drill a 1/8 inch hole there, and you put the pin in there, and you just go around in circles, lowering the bit a little at a time until you cut through. Simple as that. Then you can see if you keep going, then it will wrap around and you'll get the cable all caught up. So I usually just turn it off and go back over and then drop it a little bit deeper. And after a few passes, you've got a perfect hole. So I'm using this terminal cup this time around. It's got a gasket in there too, so it'll seal it nice and tight. Just drops it in there with 4 screws. And then you got banana plug connection, so it'll look really cool. So let's do the vent tube now. I show my mess ups too. Unfortunately, the router got away from me. It's really irritating. Fortunately, this is on the back. I'm just going to fill that with some glue and sawdust. In fact, I'll probably just take some of these pieces that you see there, mix it up with some glue, and just throw it in there. Cosmetically, it's not going to be the best, but as I said again, it's going to be on the back, and we'll just go ahead and put that in. So we just got to fill in a few gaps, and I think we'll be okay. I decided to go with a vent tube this time as opposed to just a port, and I'll cut this to appropriate size. But yeah, so not everything works out the way you plan. All right, so I got the front panels sized to fit each cabinet. And I do have to thin them out a little bit because I had that more than 3/4 of an inch. All of the panels are 3/4 of an inch. So, but they're nice and centered and everything looks great. But we're gonna go around back, and as I showed you earlier, that was the mess up. So what I've done is I filled that with glue and sawdust. I'm going to sand that completely flat once it dries, and there'll just be that little gouge area in there. And if it doesn't look right, I may just kind of gouge that out and fill it with epoxy or something like that. But I think that's going to be okay. And again, it's on the back, so I'm not that worried about it. Although you want these things to be perfect, because I do try to sell them, you end up having to take a little bit something off the price because they aren't perfect. But they'll sound great. They just will have that minor flaw in the back that nobody will actually see. All right, so my putty has dried my wood fill. It's really rough. So we're gonna sand it away and let's see what it looks like. Hopefully I didn't ruin this, but we're gonna turn everything on and you're gonna watch me sand. Yeah, not the best. Fortunately, it's on the back side. And let me put in the vent tube here and see what that looks like with the vent tube. But I'm hating life now. So I decided to put some Star Bond on there. You can see it filled the gaps a little bit better. I'll sand that stuff away. This one, we're gonna let it dry. there's the Star Bond. It works great for filling in gaps. And yeah, it's gonna not look the best, but it still will sound great. And once I get all this thing sanded out, everything will be, it'll look better than what it does now. But yeah, I had to get that fixed a little bit better. And you know, this is what happens when you do stuff by hand and you rush. That was my issue. I rushed trying to cut this hole. All right, so I watered it, or I wet it, got the wood wet so it darkened a little bit. That's what this looks like. It's nice and smooth and flush, and these were filled in. You can see where it's obvious there was an issue. Again, purely cosmetic, and somebody will, if they buy it, will benefit because it will not change what this sounds like, but they're gonna get it for less than what I was gonna sell it for. All right, time for the bracing. And by the way, there's some construction going on in the neighborhood, so you might be hearing that in the background. It's usually me making the noise, but not today. And all right, I ended up cutting this piece into two pieces and putting them at different levels or different heights, if you will, rather than just having one kind of down the middle and cutting a hole in the piece to allow the air to flow through. I did it this way. This will give me a little bit of airflow, and I was able to distribute the bracing at different points in the cabinet. So I think that's gonna work really well. And coming around this side here, you won't see that shelf there. I'll have the vent tube in there, and that will completely block it, and you won't see that. And that's it. So I got this one all glued up and clamped to make sure that it's extra tight and extra rigid. And now I think all we got to do is get the front panels done, and then we are in business. So I eyeballed the placement on this, and I said, okay, that looks pretty good. And I put a mark right there. So, and another mark right there, and that kind of showed the center. And it turns out the center is like right in that line there. And it turned out that was 92 millimeters from the top. So it just randomly turned out to be 92. I thought it looked good. And I'll do the same on the other one. But you can see here, the tweeter's a little bit off center. And then I have to cut some notches for the terminal posts. So what I'm gonna do is I measured this, it's about 2 13/16 in diameter. So I'm gonna make it 2 15/16. That way, if it's a little bit bigger, it'll give me a little bit of room to kind of move it around to get it exactly centered. And then what I'll do is with the jigsaw, I'll just cut a couple notches for these terminal posts to go in, and that should do it. I'll put a bunch of insulation in there to help seal it, but that should do it. So that's our final configuration that you see right there. Now it's gonna look a little bit off center, and that's just because that's the way the tweeter is. The frame will be centered, but it looks like the tweeter is a little bit off center. And we ended up deciding to go with 120 millimeters up from the bottom. And that seems to give us the best look.